Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Got another Cardfight Vanguard episode review for you guys today, and I'm so hyped for this one. So first off, we're only doing one episode today. Obviously, it just came out yesterday, but because I was only able to focus on one episode, I'm hoping I have a more detailed, reaction for you guys, a more detailed review of the episode, be able to make sure you guys know what's going on, and be able to give more of my thoughts on stuff that happened. I've also got more screenshots. I've got, proper names of the cards that they used. So hopefully you guys enjoy this new, one episode format. But the match that happened this episode is probably my favorite in this series so far. So I'm really excited to get into it. So if you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like, subscribe if you're new. Let's jump into checking it out. All right. So the first half of the episode's a little bit slow, but it was just a setup for, Taizo and Akina. We start off with Taizo managing his business because Taizo runs a whole company, plus he's a professional card fighter, so he's constantly juggling. He actually talks about how having that bounce back and forth between the two, he can't pick which one he wants, so he's going to try and be the best at both. It actually reminds me of Shion back in G era. There was a point where Shion went against a rival that basically got on his case about trying to be good at fencing, Vanguard, and company stuff. And because of it, he was mediocre at everything. But he ended up saying, "Screw that! I'm going to be the best at it all," and he became more of a beast. That was actually why Shion was one of my favorite characters in that series. But I'm getting a lot of that from Taizo. We found out what happened with Taizo as far as the Fated Clash goes. When they offered him the chance to join the Fated Clash, he actually rejected it because while he does have a wish and things he wants to accomplish, he wants to do it with his own hard work on his own and not be handed it to it for winning, a card fight tournament. So he actually rejects it. Because of that, he ends up meeting the Man in the Mask later, and the Man in the Mask basically asks him to actually participate in the Fated Clash because he tells him that everybody that's in the Fated Clash is destined to die, and that if they continue this fight, they're all going to die. So he wants Taizo to join the Fated Clash to basically save everyone. So Taizo makes a deal with him. He's like, show me your face. Show me your face. Tell me what's going on, and if I trust you, if we build trust, I'll do it. I'll actually participate. Now we jump over to Akina, and Akina's not necessarily freaking out, but he's worried he's going to lose because he knows how good Taizo is as a professional fighter. So he trains with Now. He ends up asking Now to help, and they spend an entire night not only just playing, but refining Akina's deck. She apparently has a huge collection, and they redo his whole deck. We see Taizo again, thinking about when he went to see Hikari, and the whole reason he went there was to actually meet Akina. And he realizes that, that's what Akina's reason for fighting is to help his little sister. But we finally get to the game, and this game is eight turns long, so not super long, but there's actually some pretty interesting moves that happen. Turn 3, turn 4, turn 5, turn 6. Like, it actually gets pretty interesting with some of the moves they make. And I really like how detailed they actually go into a lot of the moves now. But opening up, Taizo starts off first. Taizo rides Blitz best programmer Strazzer, same grade 1 he had in the last game. He sets the energy generator, passes turn to Akina. Akina goes. Akina rides Patrol of Gus Ventessa, the same grade 1 he had from his last game. Sets the energy generator, energy charges 3. He calls Aerial Sage, and then he attacks with his Vanguard. Taizo doesn't guard. Akina doesn't get a trigger. Akina deals 1 damage. He attacks with Aerial. Taizo drops a 5k guard. Now, Taizo goes on to his second turn. Taizo rides Blitzhead Researcher Uber. I said in the last match that I'm not going to always say when they draw an energy charge for turn. Just assume that they did it because they don't actually show it every time they do it. So, yeah. So I'm just not going to say it unless they make a point out of it for the rest of the episode. But he uses Strazzer's effect. Strazzer is a Soul Blast 1 to search a product card that is equal to or lower grade than your opponent's Vanguard. So he adds Mobile Kennel in Garson. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. These names are ridiculous. You're going to see it as we get farther on. But he adds it to hand and then he sets it. He attacks with his Vanguard, uses its skill Energy Blast 3 to operate a product. He operates the Engarten. which it basically called itself as a rear guard with 10k and 1 crit. Akina guards the Vanguard with a critical, and then Taizo gets a draw trigger, gives it to the product card that he just called, and then he swings with it. Akina guards with another critical trigger, and then Engarten returns to the order zone. The damage is 1-0 with Akina in the lead. Turn 4, Akina rides Knight Upgraded Vance Ascensior. He uses Ventessa's skill, calls itself to the rearguard circle. He then calls a new card that he added into his deck, Pentagleam Sorceress. So Pentagleam Sorceress is part of the ride line for Hexa Orb, but it does have an on rearguard skill, which he actually makes very good use of, which is when it's placed on rearguard, you can check the top card of your deck and either put it on top or bottom of your deck. If you put it on the bottom, she gains 2k. He actually leaves it on top, which, sets off red flags in Taizo's head. He lastly calls Prosperous Dragon. We get a quick shot of his board, and then he goes on the attack. He attacks with his Vanguard. Taizo guards it with a trigger, because obviously he thinks that he's going to get a trigger since he stacked the top card. He does. He gets a front trigger, giving 10k to the front row. He then attacks with Prosperous Dragon. Taizo doesn't guard. Taizo takes a damage. He then attacks with the Pentagleam. Taizo doesn't guard again. So now the damage is 3-0. But now we're going into Taizo's third turn, and this is where stuff gets crazy. This is turn 5. Taizo rides Faded One of Guiding Star, Wellestra Blitz Arms. He uses Uber's skill, which I really like Uber's skill, now that I actually looked into how it works. So if you have a product, you have to have a product card already in your order zone, but you Soul Blast one, you discard a card, you get to search any 2 product cards with different names, as long as they both have different names than the card that's already in your order zone. So he grabs Mobile Fortress of Obliteration, Frey Schultz Maximum, I can actually pronounce that one now, and Extreme Satellite Weaponry Urianthe. He adds them to hand, and then he uses Welstra's Divine Skill. So Welstra's Divine Skill lets him set both of them, and then operate one of them. So he operates the maximum. Now, I didn't get to mention this in my last video because I was trying to rush through the 2 games, but I really like that Wellstra isn't just a, big ass effect. It's more like a setup effect, because being able to set 3 products in a single turn, because that doesn't, the 2 that you set with his divine skill don't count as the 1 order per turn, so you can then set a 3rd one. And then I looked at I was thinking about the divine skills again, and while we have, Varga Dragus, that's absolutely a finisher. That 3rd stand will kill people. Chris Rain can be a finisher, but it can also be a defensive card, because you're bouncing all your rear guards back to hand. And then we've got Raziel, which is more kind of a survival skill / long-term skill, because you're sending back a bunch of triggers to be able to try and get them later, and then if you get a 6 damage trigger, you can heal. Like, that's nuts. But then we've got Wellstra, which is a setup card to be able to basically empower you for the rest of the game. But anyway, back to what I was saying. So he sets the two products. He operates maximum. So when maximum is operated, you get to choose one of your opponent's rear guards and retire it, and you get to give negative 5,000 power to the Vanguard. Also, there's an optional effect that basically when you operate it, you can counterblast 1, return a rear guard to your hand to then call this to the open rear guard circle as a 23k 1 crit rear guard. That's how he got the extra attack last match, and he's going to do that again this match. But let us continue. With the effect of operating it, he retires the Prosperous Dragon, and then he uses Urianthe's skill, which is when it's set, you get to draw a card and energy charge 3. He then sets Assault Flight Carrier Lubzal and uses its skill on set, since he has a Blitz Vanguard, to draw 1, soul charge 1. Once he sets it, he uses Combine Rusher, and he's able to call it from the drop, and then he calls Operate Master Freyheit from hand. He attacks with Freyheit first, uses its skill, its Soul Blast, to operate the maximum again, gives minus 5,000 power to Akina's Vanguard, and he retires Aerial Sage with it. Akina actually guards this attack with another critical, then Taizo attacks with the Vanguard, Wellstra skill activates, so Wellstra gains 10k, and then he operates the maximum again for a 3rd time, giving another minus 5,000 power to Akina's Vanguard, and retiring Ventessa. But this time he uses the optional skill of maximum to bounce back the Fairheit to then call it out as a rear guard. Akina doesn't guard the Vanguard. Taizo doesn't get a trigger. Akina takes a damage. Taizo then attacks with Combine Rusher. Akina guards it with the front trigger. And then Taizo attacks with the Maximum. Akina doesn't guard it. And then Maximum, of course, returns to the order zone at the end of the turn. So now the damage is 3-2 with Akina still in the lead. Akina plays extremely defensively, blowing out a lot of cards to guard to basically set up for Raziel's skill. But now, going into turn 6, Akina rides Faded One of Miracles Raziel. He uses a Centaur skill to call Hammer Breaking Knight Sadie from the drop zone, and then uses her skill to counterblast one to draw a card, and now she has plus 5,000 till end of turn. He then calls Major Purification, I'm never going to pronounce this right, Fupuri? It's literally Ffpuri. And he calls a Gargaon from hand. He then uses Raziel's Divine skill and sends back 5 crits to his deck, and now he has triple drive for the turn, and then if he gets a 6 damage trigger, he'll heal. He starts off with Sadie, and Taizo intercepts with the Combine Rusher. Actually, that's a solid move, because you can only bring back Combine Rusher. He then attacks with Raziel, and then uses its skill to call 2 units from the drop. He calls Prosperous Dragon, and his starter, which was Wings of Aspiration Soel, calls him from the drop. Taizo uses the Perfect Guard on the Vanguard. Akina gets a critical on his third check and gives it to Pentagleam. Pentagleam was the one rear guard that Taizo didn't retire last turn. He attacks with Prosperous Dragon, Taizo guards with a 5k, and then Akina attacks with Pentagleam, and Taizo doesn't take it, taking the critical damage. But on his second check, he gets a heal trigger and recovers 1, so now it's 4-3. Akina's still in the lead. Now we go into Taizo's big push turn. So Taizo Persona rides. He calls a Combine Rusher and a Blitz Operator Torres from hand. Then he attacks with Welsh. So he uses Welsh's skill to operate Urianthe, which this does a lot. It can't be operated the turn it's set, that's why he didn't use it last turn, but it gives minus 10,000 to the opponent's Vanguard, it retires one of their rear guards, and it deals the damage if they're at 4 or lower. So he deals the damage putting Akina up to 3, and reduces his power by 10,000, and he retires the Gargaon that was behind the Vanguard. Akina guards with 4 cards out of his hand. Taizo gets a draw trigger. This was a little weird because he draws the card, but it never says who he gives the power to, which was a little annoying. But Akina is left with 1 card in hand, and considering he hasn't perfect guarded the entire game, Taizo actually believes it's a perfect guard. And that right there shapes the entire rest of the game. Because he ends up using the Combine Rusher to swing at Prosperous Dragon. Akina doesn't guard, Prosperous Dragon dies. He then attacks the Vanguard with Torres. And because he's attacking the Vanguard, he uses its effect to operate Maximum. So he retires the Fupuri, and then bounces the Combine Rusher back to hand and calls the Maximum to attack. And then uses the Maximum to attack Pentagleam, so he wipes out his front row. If he had gone all his attacks to the Vanguard, he would have killed Akina. But at the end of turn, Maximus goes back to the order zone, and now it's 4-4. But Akina is down to 1 rear guard. We get a quick shot of the board state, and then Akina reveals that the card in his hand is not a perfect guard, and that he actually doesn't have any perfect guards in his deck. After training with Now, he actually redid his deck to be able to go against Taizo, and he went pure offense. So he has no heal triggers and no perfect guards in his deck. He was just going straight gas. But he goes into his final turn, the turn 8, and we see that the last card in his hand was Knight of Gentle Beauty Nobia. He draws for turn, he calls the Nobia, and he calls the Sadie that he just drew. And when he plays the Nobia, he uses its skill, which is to counterblast 1, check top 3 if you have a Raziel Vanguard, and call 1. The rest go to the bottom of the deck. He calls Knight of Heavenly Roar Reedy, which uses that skill, which is on call a Soul Blast 2 to make it so all your triggers now give plus 5,000 power on top of the power they already give. So he's going for the push. He attacks Torres with Sadie. Taizo doesn't guard, Sadie dies. He attacks Welstra with Nobia. Taizo doesn't guard, so now Taizo goes to 5. He attacks with Raziel, uses Raziel's skill, and calls Pentagleam and Gargaon from the drop. On call, he uses Pentagleam's skill, checks the top card of his deck, and puts it to the bottom. Taizo drops a perfect guard, and now it comes down to the twin drive. First check is nothing. Second check is a front trigger, but now the front trigger is powered up by Reedy's skill, so the front row gains 15,000. Taizo only had enough to guard one trigger, and not a front trigger, because the front trigger gives power to both columns. So the next attack is with Gargion, and he ends up taking it as he couldn't guard one of the rear guards. He goes to 6 damage, and Akina takes it. We get a nice little exchange between Akina and Taizo, and basically Taizo gives him his card and said if he ever needs anything, give him a call and he'll help him out. The last scene of the episode was interesting because, the credits were rolling, but like instead of the ending theme, it was going while the exchanges were happening. Taizo leaves and he runs into the guy with the mask. And the guy with the mask, I'm surprised you're lost. Now I got to come up with a plan B to save these people. And Taizo says, I don't think you do. I really don't. He thinks that Akina gave him the feeling that Akina might be the very person to basically stop the fate that says that all the fated ones are going to die. So he tells the masked man that he should actually play against Akina because he'll see what he saw. And that's what the episode ends. It honestly felt like a mid-season finale. The card fight was great. Storyline's getting interesting. I still think the fated ones thing is a little gimmicky, but I mean, I do like that the main character is fighting for his sister, and we got to see him modify on his deck to play against Taizo, and I can't wait to see what he's going to do for the next few opponents he's going to have to face. But let me know what you guys thought of this episode. Let me know if I missed anything that you guys wanted me to talk about, and definitely let me know if you guys are enjoying this style of video. If you guys want to check me out on social media, those links will be down below. That's it for me, and I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.